Yep, another bum version of the show, as it will take a bit of time to actually set up the everything, and I'm a bit late with this video. So yeah, let's just get into it again, and hopefully it will roll with it. Hey, I'm Kev Mr. Kerr, and welcome to Power Oversteer, the motorsport show on the ElusiveKev channel. And in today's episode, we are going to review the fourth round of the 2013 FIA Formula 1 World Championship season. It is the Bahrain Grand Prix at the Sakir International Circuit, or the Bahrain International Circuit in Sakir. I think I got it right the second time, but yeah, there was the fourth round of the championship this weekend, or last weekend, and in it we're going to look at the winners and losers, going to look at the team of the race, driver of the race, and the overtake of the race. But firstly, we of course do the race recap. And so the race recap, and lots happened. This race actually found a race quite good in. Actually, there was good strategy and some good battles during the race and during the field, and I never thought I'd see turn 6 turn into quite a productive passing spot. Yeah, but this is a race recap. Let's go through the race that by that. And normally during these recaps I miss quite a few laps, in the middle of the race, or such as with IndyCar, because they like their long caution periods. But this race I got notes on virtually every lap. It's quite amazing. So at the start we saw Rosberg get a good start away, but Vettel got a better one, and then Rosberg had to move over, quite extreme, to cover him, and he managed to hold him off. He was in the lead, but Alonso actually passed Vettel in turn 2, with the Resta, Sutil and Massa behind them. Actually the two McLarens further down the field actually collided in turn 1. This is a great spot by, I believe, Anthony Davidson, I think, on Sky, or the Sky production team there, spotting that in the first turn. But yeah, Perez, his rear wing went into the rear right. Bumping a bit there, but managed to carry on in a straight line, didn't actually lose anything. But Perez, had part of his front wing damage, and part of it was on the track as well. But then later into that, we saw Massa break himself into turn 4, and this kind of sent him into Sutil. And this punch to the front right of Sutil's, and unfortunately the forcing new driver had to crawl around back to the pits to get his tyres changed, while Massa continued on with a damaged front wing. Actually never got that changed during the race, did he? I don't think I ever saw it get changed. But we also saw it was a bad spot for Ferrari. Vettel got past Alonso into turn 6, kind of did the switch back, going a bit wide and turning and cutting down under him, and it worked really well. And actually, Ted Gravitt's talked about this in his notebook, how they were watching the GP2 race, Christian Horner and Sebastian Vettel. Christian Horner, a former driver, went as high as F3000 before he, found Arden, and he kind of ran that. Retired from driving after realising he was a bit too rubbish to continue on into F1. But yeah, Horner noticed that drivers are doing that switchback move in the GP2 race, and he suggested that Vettel maybe do that, and Vettel seemed to take it on, as it worked immediately on that first lap. We also saw Van der Garde have a look at Pig lower down the order into turn 11, and we also saw Gutierrez, and of course the unfortunate Sutil pit, and I think Gutierrez had damage as well on that first lap. So on the next lap we saw Vettel get past Rosberg into turn 4, but Vettel went wide, and so Rosberg got him on the exit. We also saw Button pass Raikkonen into turn 1 as well, and then we also saw an incident with John-Eric Verne, who kind of spun. I think he had a right rear puncher. He also damaged his floor after he got hit by Van der Garde, Guido Van der Garde in Caterham, and so he had to pit for a new nose cone Van der Garde, and Verne had to pit for a new car. Unfortunately they didn't have a new car, so they only changed the tyres, and he continued on with a damaged car for quite a few laps before he was eventually retired because there was too much damage to that car. But at the end of this lap though, the order was Rosberg, from Vettel, from Alonso, from De Resta in 4th, Massa, Webber, Button, Perez, Raikkonen and Grosjean, and at the end of the second lap, Button did the fastest lap with a 42.654. But on the next lap, we saw Rosberg defend from Vettel into turns 1 and 4, but Vettel got a better exit from turn 4 and passed Rosberg into turn 6 and into the lead, and off he went in the lead. We also saw Perez defend from Raikkonen into turn 11 as DRS became active, and Rosberg defended from Alonso into the final turn. Vettel put in the fastest lap with 41.960 despite, passing Rosberg on that lap. Then on the next lap, Rosberg outbraked Alonso into turn 1 to keep second after, Alonso kind of DRS'd him a bit down the front straight. And also saw Button have a nick at Webber into turn 4. We also saw further back Bianchi and Pick fighting hard again in the early stages of the race, just like in China, for 16th. And again, Vettel did the fastest lap with a 41.417. On lap 5, Alonso finally DRS'd Rosberg down the front straight and into second. On the next lap, De Resta went past Rosberg round the outside into turn 1, is up to third place in the Force India. On lap 7, Massa tried round the outside of Rosberg in the turn 1s and 4, but Rosberg this time, he wasn't going to be mugged, he defended hard. And we also saw Alonso DRS be ride open, stuck open even, and so he had to pit to get that, push down. It wasn't like Michael Schumacher when his DRS wing was open in Canada, a couple of years ago, but this time, they actually managed to push it back down, and so Alonso, after a 4.5 second stop, he came out in 17th, quite low down the order, unfortunately. And it was even more unfortunate on the next lap when it was stuck open again, and he had to pit and get that, seen to, and he was even further down the order, unfortunately. But on lap 8, we also saw the first of the McLaren fighting. Button and Perez fighting hard in 5. Well, second part of the McLaren fighting 4, 5, 6 and 7. Perez got a great run out of turn 3, 1, 2 and 3. We also saw Webber and Grosjean pitting from hards, interestingly. So we saw the first of the stoppers. We also saw Rosberg, Button and Ricciardo pit on the next lap, and we also saw Massa go down the inside of Rosberg in turn 1 for 4th before that though. So on lap 10, we also had Pick in 10th, Charles Pick in 10th in the cage room, with Webber behind him, Rosberg and Button behind him after the stops, ahead of Max Chilton. Only Massa, Hulkenberg and Bottas were on the hard tyres in the top 10 though, and outside it, only Chilton was on the medium, so you can see where the order stoppers came out in. But the order was Vettel, Massa, Perez, Hamilton and Maldonado. They all pitted. That wasn't the order, that was all the pitters. But yeah, Vettel came out in 5th, Massa in 10th, Perez in 12th, Hamilton in 13th, Maldonado in 14th, and Webber did the fastest out of the race on those new tyres with a 40.030. On the next lap, Pick finally pitted and came out in 17th. On lap 12, Button DRS Rosberg before turn 1 was up to 7th place. Hulkenberg pitted from 3rd spot and came out in 13th behind Maldonado, kind of lost the space there. Vettel did the fast lap with 39.849, we dipped into the 30s. On lap 13, Rosberg DRS Button was back ahead of him into 6th place. Grosjean looked down the inside of Massa, but had a scruffy exit from turn 4, so Massa stayed ahead into turn 6. Bottas pitted from 5th and came out in 15th. Then on lap 14, we saw Pick DRS Gutierrez down the front straight and into 16th. Yeah, look at this fight between Gutierrez and Pick that was last the whole race. The rest are pitted from the lead and came out in 9th after a 3.2 second stop, and was out ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Also, Van der Garde pitted and came out in 21st. He was last. Well, second last to Verne, but Verne was stopped soon. On lap 15, we saw Vettel pass Raikkonen into turn 1 for the lead, while Hulkenberg DRS'd Maldonado and into 11th at turn 1. Only Raikkonen and Hamilton were on the medium tyres in the top 10 at this time, and on the next lap we saw Bottas pass Ricciardo and into 14th. And the order, the first order recap, it was Vettel ahead of Raikkonen with Webber 3rd, Rosberg 4th, Button 5th, Massa 6th, Grosjean 7th, Perez 8th, De Resta and Hamilton, Hulkenberg, Maldonado, Alonso in 13th, Bottas, Ricciardo, Pick in 16th, Gutierrez, Bianchi, Chilton, Sutil, Vandergaard and Verne. And on this lap, Raikkonen did pit onto hard tyres. After a 3.6 second stop, he came out in 11th ahead of Maldonado, but behind Hulkenberg. Gutierrez also pitted and came out in 19th. On lap 17, Massa dropped down the order with a right rear puncture that's happened on the back stretch in that DRS zone, I believe, and he pitted, went on to mediums quite strangely enough, and came out in 15th, and Verne did retire with all of that damage on his car. On lap 19, lap 18, I don't think anything happened. Lap 19, Pitt was ahead of Bianchi by 8 seconds in 16th, with Chilton right behind his teammate. Vandergaard was already lapped. On lap 20, Button kind of had a look at Rosberg out on the outside of turn 1 and gets him on the exit to go into third place. Grosjean went round the outside of Rosberg in turn 4 for 4th. And then Rosberg had to defend from Perez into the last corner as they both pitted then. Very good for the rest of behind, and they both went on to hard and came out in 12th and 13th. On that 21, Button defended from Grosjean the whole lap. He was again seen everywhere by that Frenchman. Webber and Button pitted though, with Webber out behind Alonso and Button out ahead of Bottas. Sutil right at the back did the faster lap with a 38.909. On that 22, Perez switched back on Rosberg out of turn 4 into turn 6 for 10th. Massa passed Bottas for 13th in turn 4. Hamilton pitted and came out behind Ricciardo, very ominous Ricciardo, in 15th, and Bianchi pitted, came out in 19th. On that 23, Rosberg was back past Perez into turn 4 for 9th. All that Rosberg was fighting. Webber was past Alonso for 8th, and then Webber was down the inside of Maldonado in turn 8 for 6th, and Maldonado pitted at the end of this lap and came out in 15th. Lap 24, Perez and Button were fighting hard past Rosberg into turn 1 as Perez kind of defended from Button as they both had DRS. Webber DRS Hulkenberg for 5th down the back straight, and Alonso pitted for more hards and came out in 15th behind Maldonado. Lap 25, Vettel pitted from the lead for more sauce. After a 2.7 second stop, he is out again in the lead. Perez was past Hulkenberg for 6th, and Ricciardo pitted and came out in 15th. Lap 26, Button was past Hulkenberg into turn 1, and then Rosberg was past him into turn 8. Alonso was past Maldonado in turn 1 for 13th, and then Hulkenberg at the end of that lap pitted and came out in 14th. Lap 27, DRS for De Resta. He passed Grosjean down the front straight into 2nd. Button DRS, Perez was 6th in the same spot as well. Hamilton passed Bottas into turn 11 and is up into the points in 10th. Grosjean pitted from mediums at the end of the lap from 3rd and came out behind Massa in 9th, and Vettel set the fastest out the race with a 38.649. On the next lap, we heard about Rosberg being in fuel saving mode already, a bit like Hamilton in Malaysia. You know, he's told to go on mix free and lift and coast. Massa pitted from 8th onto hards and came out in 14th after a 2.7 second stop. And on lap 29, this was the order. Vettel led from De Resta with Raikkonen 3rd, Webber, Button, Perez, Rosberg, Grosjean, Hamilton and Alonso in the points. Maldonado, Hulkenberg, Massa, Bottas, who had pitted from 10th on this lap, Ricciardo, Pick in 16th, Gutierrez, Sutil slowly working his way up the order, Bianchi, Chilton and Vandergaard completed the order. On lap 30, Perez looked everywhere round Button into turn 1, but Button held on round the outside. He defended from Perez into turn 4, and on the exit, Perez barely touches his rear with his ring as Button kind of did the stop-start on the exit. You know, you get on the power a bit later than the guy expects, and so that slows him down. And so that's what I'm doing. Perez and Button was on the radio telling the team, tell Perez, calm down, calm down, mate, calm down. But it didn't seem like the Mexican got the message from the team, and it didn't seem like the team gave it to the Mexican as they fought hard on that 32, as well as Button defended from Perez into turns 1 and 4, and Perez then was forced wide in turn 5 by Button. Bit aggressive move from the Englishman. Grosjean passed Rosberg down the inside into turn 4 for 7th, and Button was like, he's moving across on me, when Will banging. Come on, guys. No, guys, didn't bother. On that 33, Grosjean was down the inside of Perez into turn 1, but they almost touched wheels, and so Grosjean, couldn't get past, but he got a great run out of turn 3. And then we went round the outside of Perez into turn 4 after a little dummy going down the inside, but he went round the outside. So he got past the Mexican for 7th, and the other Mexican, Gutierrez, pitted from 18th and came out in 20th. On that 34, Raikkonen DRS the rest down the front straight for 2nd. Grosjean DRS Button in the same area for 5th, and then at the end of that, Raikkonen pitted for the 2nd and final time for hards and came out in 7th after a 3-second stop. Button also pitted and came out in 12th. On that 35, Massa DRS Maldonado down the front straight for 9th. Then Rosberg DRS Maldonado into turn 11 for 10th. Pick pitted from 16th and was out in 18th behind Bianchi. That 36 for Hamilton DRS Perez down the inside of the front straight for 5th. The rest are pitted from 2nd and came out in 8th on his final stop. Massa also pitted with another right rear puncher and went on to the hards from mediums and came out in 15th for his final stop. And Raikkonen was setting the fastest out of the race on his new tyres with a 38.591. That 37, Perez defended from Raikkonen into that last corner. Webber came in for the pits for the final time, came out in 8th. Rosberg set the fastest out of the race with 38.296. That 38, Raikkonen DRS Perez down the front straight for 4th. Gutierrez was past Chilton for 18th. Webber defended very hard in turn 2 from Rosberg on the pit exit, basically just cut across him, meaning Button passed Rosberg for 9th as he was recovering. Raikkonen passed Hamilton into the final corner before Hamilton actually pitted and came out in 10th behind his teammate Rosberg. That 39, Alonso pitted from 5th and Perez from 4th, and they came out in 9th and 10th. Maldonado also pitted and came out in 13th. That 40, Massa was past Ricciardo for 14th, and both Mauritius were now lapped. On that 41, Grosjean, Rosberg and Hulkenberg were the only drivers on mediums in the top 12. Maldonado and Massa, although fighting hard for that 13th. Sittil was past Hulkenberg, who pitted and came out in 15th. Alonso set the fastest out of the race with a 1:37.204, second faster than the previous mark from Rosberg. On that 41, Grosjean, that was that 41, that 42 even. Pitt was lapped in 17th. Vettel pitted for the final time with a 3.6 second stop, a leisurely stop from Red Bull, and he came back out in the lead. Grosjean pitted from 2nd, went on to mediums and came out in 5th, just ahead of Button. Sittil pitted from 15th and came out in 16th, just ahead of Pitt. Gutierrez pitted and came out in 18th, just over 20 seconds behind Pitt. That 44, Grosjean DRS Webber down the front straight and into 4th. Rosberg was past Button in turn 1 for 7th. Perez defended from Alonso in turns 1 and 4 for 9th. Rosberg pitted from 6th and came out in 10th. Sittil set the fastest out of the race on his new tyres with a 1:37.070 as he passed Ricciardo for 15th. On that 45, Hamilton DRS Button down the front straight and into 6th. That 46, Perez has a look at Button into turn 1 and goes down his inside into turn 4 for 7th. Alonso also went down the inside of Button in turn 8 for 8th, and Button pitted at the end of the lap for the 4th and final time for mediums and was out in 10th. Now at 47, Alonso passed Perez into turn 1 for 7th. Perez did a switch back in turn 4 but kind of failed. Chilton pitted from 20th and came out in 20th. Bottas pitted from 11th, came out in 14th. Maldonado switches back on Massa out of turn 4 and passes down his inside in turn 6 for 11th. So the order at this time, with just under 10 laps to go, Vettel by 9.5 seconds from Raikkonen, with the rest at 8.5 seconds back in 3rd, with Grosjean about 4 seconds back by gaining by over a second per lap in 4th. Webber was 6 seconds behind Grosjean in 5th, just ahead of Hamilton, Alonso and Perez. Rosberg was 14 seconds back in 9th, with Button 5 seconds back in 10th and 50 seconds off the lead. Bottas is 3 seconds back in 11th, with Massa 3 seconds behind him, and Maldonado right behind Massa in 13th. Hulkenberg was 6 seconds back in 14th, with Sutil 15.5 seconds behind Hulkenberg in 15th. Ricciardo was 7 seconds further back in 16th, with Pick just 4.4 seconds behind him and 90 seconds off the lead in 17th. Gutierrez was 14.5 seconds behind. Bianchi was 33.2 seconds behind Gutierrez, and Chilton 6 behind his teammate, and they were a lap down. Van der Garde was 2 laps down and 87 seconds behind Chilton. So back to the race, lap 51. Hamilton was down the inside of Webber into turn 4 for 5th, and Sutil had passed Bottas for 14th. For lap 52, Grosjean went down the inside of De Resta in turn 1 for 3rd. Lap 53, Webber defended from Hamilton down the front straight for 5th and defended into turn 4. And on lap 54, we saw Perez go down the inside of Alonso in turn 4 for 7th and kind of forced him off the road, much like Button had done to him earlier in the race. Lap 55, Webber again defended from Hamilton in turn 1, but then Hamilton went down his inside into turn 4, but Webber just kept it on the outside. Meanwhile, his teammate Vettel set the fast lap with a 36.961, and Rocky went onto the radio and said, "Stay under control, stay under control." On the next lap, lap 56, Webber defended from Hamilton on the inside in turns 1, 4 and 6, but finally Hamilton made his way past on the last lap in turn 1 for 5th, and Perez passed Webber down the inside for 6th in turn 6. So the final finishing order was Vettel winning by 9 seconds from Raikkonen, with Grosjean another 10 seconds back in 3rd. The rest was 2 seconds off a podium, with Hamilton 13.5 seconds behind him, with Perez right behind him. Webber was 1.3 behind the Mexican, with Alonso just behind him. Rosberg was 3 seconds back in 9th, and Button 5.5 seconds back, or 46.6 seconds off the lead in 10th. Maldonado 20 seconds off a point in 11th, with Hulkenberg 6.5 seconds behind him. Sito was just 4 seconds behind Hulkenberg in 13th, with Bottas 5 seconds behind Sutil and a further 5 seconds back to Massa in the disappointing 15th. Ricciardo was 16th, just over 5 seconds ahead of Charles Pic and Gutierrez, who crossed the line virtually together. Bianchi and Chilton were lapped down in 19th, 20th, and Van der Garde was 2 laps down in 21st, with John-Eric Vergne the only retiree. And that is your race recap. So let's look at the winners and losers from this Grand Prix. So the winners and losers from this Bahrain Grand Prix, and let's start at the front with Red Bull, of course. Big winners with Sebastian Vettel dominating at the front. Just seeing the manager's tyres, manager's pace perfect. Even did the fastest out of the race on the second to last lap, and we got some nice team radio, you know. Calm down a bit, Sebastian. Don't you're in the clear. Don't try and push for these records again. But you know, he likes to go for the fastest laps, as they always like to say in the broadcast, and he did it again, and he was just dominant at the front. Mark Webber down in 7th place. Sorry, he did get passed by Sergio Perez on the last lap, but yeah, it's a track where the rear tyres, you know, do get worn out a bit, and it seemed like he did struggle with a tyre wear, like I think most drivers in the race did struggle with tyre wear, especially drivers who fought with other drivers in the race, such as Webber did, especially near the end with Hamilton and with Perez. And he did a good job defending from Hamilton at first, but eventually on the last lap he just had to give up the ghost, and he gave up to Perez as well into turn 6 after the, you know, good exit from turn 4 for Perez. So yeah, kind of a good weekend for Red Bull, despite, you know, Webber not quite being up there with Vettel, but you know, good solid points. You can't really ask more than that, really. And that goes to Lotus as well. You know, great points for them this weekend, double podium, especially on Saturday. You know, poor qualifying, Grosjean outside the top 10, Raikkonen barely in the top 10, and so you know, they just managed their race well, managed the strategy really well. And Raikkonen, he kind of popped up there, you know, in the lead and then challenging Vettel at times, but he was just racing for second. I think the team realised that quite quickly. You know, he's racing for second, and they kind of adjusted the strategy accordingly and adjusted it to manage holding off, you know, the rest of behind. He was challenging a bit at times, but in the end, the rest of this challenge kind of fell, and then Grosjean just emerged from the midfield, and with his alternate strategy, two-stop strategy, and it worked out really well. And the Frenchman, showing great speed here and great actually aggression. He's been kind of criticised for being not so aggressive in the first few races. Even I've said, he's perhaps thinking of keeping his front nose on rather than trying to pass the guys in front. And so this race, he just showed, he's still got it. He still can make those moves, and hopefully this kind of kick-starts this season, especially a big result like this, the podium, heading into Europe where you get all these big updates where, sometimes the order gets a bit shuffled up, and maybe those have got a really good package and it really helps them get up there. But for Grosjean, just a great confident boost going ahead. Ferrari, and they had a poor race here. They had reliability issues. Stefano Domenicali said it after the race, it's kind of unacceptable that we have these reliability issues, especially as they got a much better car this year. At the beginning of the year, they got to kind of take advantage of that, and they managed to take advantage of a poorer car with Alonso last year. But they developed that car really well after the first 4 races. After from Spain onwards, challenging for the victory in Spain with Alonso. That was a great turnaround from what happened in Bahrain, where they stranded in the midfield fighting with like the Resta for 6th place. So yeah, great turnaround last year, and they got a very good car this year, but the reliability wasn't here. And I don't know what happened to Massa's punches. I've been looking up, and then there's been kind of no explanations. Maybe he's just running over the curve a bit too much. But yeah, 2 punches on the same wheel with the 2 different compounds. That's a bit strange, Pirelli. A bit strange. And we also saw a punch, I think, with Jean-Eric Vergne further down the field, so with the right rear as well. And then we saw it, of course, with Sittil on the front right after contact with Massa early in the race. And Massa drove around with that damaged rear wing for the whole of the race. They didn't think of changing it. Ferrari, and maybe they should have. I don't know, but it seemed like Massa was coping well with that until he had that puncture. And yeah, it's just poor for Ferrari, but Alonso did a great job salvaging some points. It's just unfortunate Massa didn't really have the opportunity to do that with those 2 punches. But yeah, expect much better from Ferrari in Spain. And with the development they had last year, maybe they can expect them to be develop well this year as well. And even though traditionally they haven't been the greatest in recent years at developing the car, but maybe they will this year. So we do have Mercedes up there as well, especially on Saturday. What a pole that from Nico Rosberg. That was a brilliant lap from him, and then he got caught fighting too much. Very aggressive at the start against Vettel, and very aggressive against anyone who dared take his place away, and that kind of ruined his race, because of course if you fight you burn up the tyres, and yeah, that made him do 4 stops, and that made him drop down to 9th place. Compare this to Lewis Hamilton. He had no pace on the mediums and was kind of by himself in the first half of the race in 10th, and then he went on the hards. He found pace and he just gradually moved his way up the order, got past Mark Webber on the final lap as well, after a good couple of laps of good defensive driving from Webber and good controlled aggressive driving from Hamilton as well, trying to poke a hole in his defence basically. And he didn't quite do it until the last lap when Webber's tyres just kind of were off the cliff. And so yeah, very good race from Hamilton. A shame about the penalty, on the grid penalty. Maybe he would have done much better in the race, but he still would have had probably no pace on those mediums, and he probably would have burned up his tyres a bit more, and that would have showed up Mercedes' weakness of burning up the tyres. It kind of showed here, where the rears really went away for Rosberg, especially in that first stint after about 5 or 6 laps. That was insane how fast those tyres went off. But yeah, solid for Mercedes. Very good on Saturday, solid on Sunday, but I think they'll be open to work their way past these, wear issues that they normally have with the rear tyres, and it kind of showed its head in Bahrain. But maybe you won't show it in other races because then it's not as hot, of course, and it's a bit cooler, and maybe they've got an update on the car in Spain that helps with that. But yeah, that is just another poor, just a very, well, not poor Sunday, but a very different Sunday from a very good Saturday. McLaren, Perez was 6th and Button was 10th, and they kind of put the action on the action of the race, didn't they? Fighting each other from the first corner, where Perez kind of gave a bit of a tap to Button and kind of damaged his front wing, and then of course in the middle part of the race where the strategies converged and Button kind of dropping down the order, Perez was moving up, and Perez, very aggressive in it, and Button very aggressive as well in defence. And really, someone from McLaren should have told someone to let someone through, because it just was to the detriment of their strategies that they were fighting, and it proved with Button having to do an extra pit stop, or doing a 4th pit stop, and being down in 10th, and Perez only getting really 6th when he perhaps could have got 5th or 3rd, or maybe even 4th, but I think that was a bit too ambitious. But even though at the end you saw 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and yeah, all of those cars on the front straight at the end, so maybe they could have actually challenged, maybe for a podium with Perez. But yeah, that great fighting, but really, if you wanted your strategies to play out as intended, you would have been on the radio and told someone to go through. But McLaren do like their two drivers being equal, and they do try and show that quite a lot and say that a lot in interviews. But really, I think while it was good entertainment for us fans, it wasn't good for the team, and it wasn't good for their strategies, and it proved so in the end with only a 6th and a 10th, where maybe if they weren't fighting, if they let, say, Perez through, even though Button, he was very stern, and he was the senior driver, and even though they are like equal, we kind of see that Button is kind of the the lead guy there. So maybe they wouldn't put that call in, and maybe that's why they didn't put the call in. If it was shoe on the other foot, if Perez was in front, maybe they would have let Button through. But yeah, they really should have just let someone through, and they've only got a 6th and a 10th in the end, when they could maybe have got a 5th and a 6th, or 4th and a 6th, 5th and a 7th. Much more points anyway in the fight in case. So yeah, McLaren, but it was good pace from them. They do prove to be quite good in hot conditions, it seems, such as in Malaysia as well. China, that was just a strategy race that really played out very well, but they just showed much better pace here, and that bodes well, for the rest of the year. And they're still talking about, title challenge for Button, and you never know with the updates. Maybe they've got some very good fixes, and it will prove to be that. So yeah, McLaren, good race, but could have been much better if the two drivers weren't fighting each other like hell in the middle of the race. So Force India, they were very, very good this weekend. Very good in all the sessions as well. Very good qualifying. And then it kind of went wrong for Seto on the first lap, 4th corner, when he had a contact with Massa and that punctured his tyres. He did work his way well up the field in the end. I think it was 14th or 13th at the end. And so he did have very good race pace. It's just a shame that he had that contact with Massa at the beginning, or else he would have been right up there with De Resta, maybe even fighting for a podium like De Resta was. And De Resta, 4th place, he's been there before at Singapore, but this time he was actually really in with a chance of fighting for a podium. At Singapore he kind of benefited from problems for Hamilton and Maldonado, and he wasn't really quite there with the top 3, but here he really did challenge for it, and in the end their strategies didn't kind of work out as well as Grosjean's, and that meant he had fresher tyres at the end, Grosjean, with those 2 fresh medium sets, I think they said. And so yeah, in the end didn't quite work out for the rest to get podium, but very good 4th place, and it really bodes well, going to Europe, how strong that Force India was. But we've seen this last year, we've seen it the year before, we've seen it 2010, where they were very strong in the first few races, and then they kind of fell back in the development race and kind of slotted into the midfield, and really were battling for 6th in the end, and really didn't quite get it last year. But hopefully they do have better development this year, and hopefully both drivers can drive well. It seems to be one or the other at the moment, much like it was with De Resta and Hulkenberg last year, and then Sedell and the rest of the year before, when then Sotero and Yurtse the year before. Yeah, you get the pattern. So yeah, hopefully it's just more consistent from Fortuna going on, but very good weekend from them, great weekend from them. So let's go through the rest of the teams. You got Sauber, very disappointing, extremely disappointing this weekend. Hulkenberg just was nowhere in the race, and I've talked about tyre issues in China and in Malaysia with Hulkenberg, and again it seemed like there's a case here in Bahrain. And Gutierrez, I know you had an issue in the first few laps, but you couldn't even get past Pick in the end. And well, it was a brilliant drive from Pick. No disrespect to Caterham, they are nowhere. They're not as fast as Sauber. They're a few tenths off the pace there, or a few, like half a second at least. But Gutierrez was just stuck behind him at the end, and even though he made a 15-second gap up in about 10 laps at the end, he still didn't make it fast at the end. He was stuck behind him, and so it was just very disappointing for Sauber, especially compared to the car last year. It was very kind to the tyres. This year it seems to be the opposite. So they've really got some issues to work through and issues to solve, and hopefully in this big Europe update that comes in Spain. But yeah, very disappointing. Again, Gutierrez out in the first part of qualifying. That kid has got to improve his qualifying quickly, or he'll be a permanent member there, like Verne was for the first part last year, and then he really did improve. He got consistently into Q2. So yeah, Gutierrez got to improve your qualifying, and yeah, I bet Hulkenberg's kind of regretting his move at the moment, but we don't know how the rest of the season will pan out. We've still got 16 races, of course. So yeah, disappointing for Sauber, but Williams, improved pace for them. That was very encouraging for Williams. Maldonado 11th, Bottas not far behind, and Bottas was in the top 10 at stages, and then he got past by Alonso, I think, in the middle of the race as Alonso is doing his charge, and for most of the race Bottas was in front of Maldonado, but again the strategies and I think tyre wear as well played out, and Maldonado 11th, not near the points, but it's encouraging for Williams that they're much closer to the midfield. They're not just this hovering piece between the newer teams and the midfield. They were actually in the midfield, and they kind of swapped places with Toro Rosso and Daniel Ricciardo. Where was your pace? He was just running lonely. He was just lonely running in the race, just by himself, having a nice Sunday drive. And we all know about Verne having the puncture early on, spinning, and that damage with Van der Garde hitting him, and so he had too much damage for the car, unfortunately. But yeah, just mysterious lack of pace this weekend for Toro Rosso, and hopefully that improves. And it's not a sign of them, slipping in development again during the mid-season, and hopefully they can pick it up again at the end of the season again, like they normally do. But hopefully, it's a bit better for Toro Rosso in the European part of the season. And that leaves us with the newer teams, with Caterham and Marussia. And I saw this in Ted's notebook. He said Caterham gained half a second between China and Bahrain. Half a second! How do you find that much? I know they probably had some new parts on, but how do you find that much? A really big chunk of time. You normally gain, tenths of a second teams, but half a second between two race weekends. That's brilliant from Caterham. Whatever they were doing, maybe they changed setup, maybe they did something, but half a second. I know it could maybe be Circuit Pacific, with China being very different with rear orientated, Bahrain very much rear orientated, or front orientated for China, sorry, and rear orientated for Bahrain. But half a second. It was great to see, and Pick was the star of the newer teams this weekend, almost a second ahead of the Marussias in qualifying. And then he was just ahead of them, and for the whole race Marussia just stranded behind. It was brilliant to see from Pick. Hope to see more of that in the rest of the season. But yeah, great drive from Pick, and he held off Gutierrez at the end. Intense pressure from the Sauber driver, but held him off at the end. And so yeah, I hope to see a good battle from Caterham and Marussia going forward. Hope it's not Caterham so far in front, but there's big updates, of course. I'm talking about big updates in Spain. So hopefully, they get close to the midfield and can take advantage of poor races like they did here in Bahrain, or there in Bahrain. So yeah, very encouraging for Caterham. It's just a shame about Van der Garde having that early collision with Verne, using his whole of his front nose, going having to change that, and he just kind of trundled down for the rest of the race, 2 laps down. But and Pick was, you know, he was barely lapped as well, you know, barely lapped behind Ricardo, just a few seconds behind Ricardo as well. So really encouraging for Caterham. And on the hand for Marussia, really disheartening. You know, Caterham were kind of closer to them in China, and then they overtook them here in Bahrain. But as I said, big updates coming, and you know, Bianchi and Chilton very close now, very close. I know that's a circuit Bianchi and Chilton know from their past in GP2 and GP2 Asia, and so maybe that would have helped, you know, with track knowledge for Chilton, you know, getting closer to Bianchi. Bianchi's had more experience in F1 cars in the past, so yeah, and this side's getting much closer between those two, so that'll be an interesting battle further down the season, hopefully. But yeah, that is my winners and losers. A bit of a mixed bag, well, not as mixed as China, but you know, you've got very big winners, you've got very big losers, and there's a couple in the middle. So that's the winners and losers. Let's go to of the race. So, of the race and driver of the race, well, we've got so many candidates for driver of the race. Of course, we've got Sebastian Vettel at the front, dominating in his Red Bull, much like Alonso did in China in his Ferrari. You've got the 2 Lotus drivers, Kimi Räikkönen and Roman Grosjean, both on the podium. Especially what happened on Saturday with the, you know, not the best qualifying performance, but especially Grosjean from 11th on the grid up to 3rd. Great drive from him, and of course from Räikkönen as well. And behind them, Paul di Resta in the Force India, just missing out on his maiden podium in the Force, and he was strong all weekend in that Force India. We have got maybe Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, quite anomalous in the first half of the race, especially on those medium tyres, which he said he had no pace on. But in the second half of the race, he came from about 10th up to 5th, so great drive from him. You know, he really managed his race well, especially compared to his teammate Rosberg, who, you know, started in pole, finished in 9th with 4 pit stops. So yeah, good drive from Hamilton. And Fernando Alonso in 8th in the Ferrari, through no fault of his own, you know, dropping down into the midfield early on when his DRS flap was open, and then he tried it and it was open again, and then they had to push it down. It was about the somersault of his rear wing, but luckily it didn't, and they managed to just not use DRS for the rest of the race. And despite that, you know, lack of DRS, he still works his way greatly up the field. He's up to 8th, and he could almost see 5th in Hamilton. So at the end, so great drive from Alonso. And Charles Pic in the Caterham, who had a great race in that case. He was the star of the newer teams this weekend. You know, we've normally seen Jules Bianchi in that role, but Charles Pic was brilliant this race. Held off Esteban Gutierrez right at the end in the Sauber, and is a few seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo in the Toro Rosso. And I think this race kind of proves, you know, if one of those midfield teams such as Toro Rosso, Sauber, or Williams have a bit of a problem in the race, you know, Caterham and Marussia are in that slot now where they can kind of take advantage of that. And such as Toro Rosso with Daniel Ricciardo, you know, had slow race pace as well, so they're almost there, touching the midfield almost, it seems. But that bodes well to the future, and it's like we might have, you know, more cars challenging for those midfield slots. Maybe not this year, but you know, they're almost there. So yeah, driver of the race. Well, from all of those candidates, I think I'm going to go for Roman Grosjean in the Lotus. He showed just the right amount of aggression and speed this race. I know he's been accused of being quite timid in the first few races, not being aggressive enough, and just, you know, not really trying to get past people. He's just too busy thinking of saving his front wing, and, you know, not really attacking as much. But this race, he just smoothly went through the field, had some great pace as well, which, you know, always helps, and he just, you know, made some great moves through the field. So I think I'll give it to Roman Grosjean. You know, it's a bit unexpected as well. He from 11, you know, kind of expected, you know, might be anomalous again, you know, just being that 8th, 9th, 10th spot, or 6th or 7th, like he's been virtually the whole of the year in the previous 3 races. But in this race, you know, really showed great timing, great moves, and worked his way up the order to get his first podium of the year, just like he did last year. His maiden F1 podium in Bahrain, the same podium as well. So I'll give it to Grosjean. Team of the race has to be Lotus, hasn't it? 2 drivers on the podium. You can't really ask much more from them. Well, maybe the win, but there was a certain Vettel bloke who was dominating at the front in the Red Bull. But the 2 Lotuses on the podium, especially what happened on Saturday, as I said, not the best of qualifying, but in the race, good strategy. And despite Raikkonen, he's thinking he could have held on to those tyres near the end, for his final stop, but they pitted him early and, tried to kind of combat the rest of behind, and so it worked out, got him second. And you never know what would have happened if they actually did qualify well in the top 10. 2 of those that could have been challenging Vettel, but many people could have been challenging Vettel, such as Alonso, maybe even Sutil in the Force India if he didn't hit him, if he didn't have that little contact with Mass on the first lap. But yeah, well done to the Lotus for 2 drivers on the podium, and they look very strong, and like the main challengers to Red Bull at the moment. So that leaves us with overtake of the race, and I think I'll go for a move on lap 33 when a certain Roman Grosjean almost hit Sergio Perez in the first corner. Had to do some little evasive manoeuvres, but he got a run through turn 3. He used a bit of curves, I'm guessing, got right in the slipstream of Perez and kind of ducked to the inside, made Perez defend the inside, then went round the outside and made a really smooth, lovely move around the outside, accelerating past the McLaren driver. And I've got to give it to him. I'm always a sucker for kind of those dummy moves that work, and so yeah, I'll give it to Roman Grosjean, completing a Lotus sweep of the race awards this Grand Prix. So that is the end of this Power Oversteer. I hope you have enjoyed it. I'll be back with an F1 Power Oversteer for the Spanish Grand Prix, the start of the European season. We're going to see some massive updates to every car, and you never know, it might even shake up the order a bit, but I won't touch wood. I don't actually think it will, but you never know, you might propel some teams up the order and drop some others down. So yeah, that's when I'll be back with another Power Oversteer about F1. I do hope you enjoyed this dilemma for watching. So till next time, cheerio.